If you guys want to follow along, you can find this on AP CSA course and exam description. It'll be on AP College Board. I think it's like page 184, I want to say, which is way down here. Not 184, 194 maybe. Yeah, 194. Talk about the exam overview. Talk about the different weighting on different areas, if that's something you're interested in. It's kind of cool. How much of it's going to be about programming, an algorithm, code logic, testing, documentation, etc. Finally, our sample questions. If I remember right, this goes in a general, similar order as to what the order of the units. Not the test will be random order, but the order of the units. Okay. So A equals 5, B equals 2, C equals 3.0. So this is a double, so that's important to know. So A divided by B. Order of operations will be a common test that you'll need to know, a common test question. So knowing order of operations, and then obviously integer division. So 5 divided by 2 would happen first because it would be left to right. So 5 divided by 2 would just be 2 because they're both integers. It would truncate the 0.5. And so it would be 2 times C is 3. So that would be 2 times 3 is 6. 5 plus 6 is 11. Minus 1 is 10.0. That would be our first answer there. So consider the process words method. Assume that each of its 2 parameters is a string of length 2 or more. Word 1, word 2. Word 1 dot substring 0, 2. So that would get locations 0 and 1 of the string word 1, so the first 2 letters. Word 2 dot substring word dot length minus 1. This was only one parameter, meaning it would go from that value to the end, or to the length. And so this will get the last letter by itself. So it'll be the first 2 letters and the last letter. However, notice this gets added in a different order than string 1 plus string 2. It's string 2 plus string 1. So it would be the last letter plus the first 2 letters. And then we are going to print result that dot index of str2. Well, str2 is right at the beginning. So index of str2 is going to be 0. Always. Right? That is our answer. Always 0. Now on to 3. Which of the following statements assign a random integer between 25 and 60? So right away, I know my minimum must be 25. So I'm going to likely be plussing 25 because math.random could be 0, getting a 0 as my minimum on this set of code. So I need a plus 25. Now, the multiplication is the range of numbers. So this portion could get 0 to 59. Plus 25 would get a random value 25 to 74. That is not 25 to 60. Times 36 would get us a random value 0 to 35. Plus 25 would get us a random value 25 to 60, which is exactly what we want. So this will be our original range 0 up to but not including 36. So 0 to 35. And then what we add will add to the minimum and maximum, which gives us our answer D. All right, vehicles are classified based on their total interior volume. The classify method is intended to return a vehicle classification string value based on total interior volume in cubic feet as shown below. So you're going to be assigned one of these, and this is a classic if-else if making sure the order is correct, et cetera, et cetera. Some of these will cause issues that, yeah. So if volume is greater than or equal to 120, it's large. If it's mid-size, it should probably be the next highest. So if volume is less, if volume is less than 120, well, that means volume could be 0 and it would still be considered mid-size. So right away, that looks like an issue in the code. So let's look at because that tells us a lot, so let's look at what they're asking for. Classify method works as intended for some, but not all values of the parameter volume. For which of the following values of volume would the correct value be returned when classify method is executed? So the correct value would still be returned if mid-size, let's see, mid-size is supposed to be 110 to 119. So I guess if the value is between 110 and 119, that is less than 120, so mid-size would still be correct in that scenario. So we're looking for a value 110 to 119. E is our only one that's between 110 and 119, which validates that answer even more because only one of them can be right. So E, 115 would be our answer. Which of the following best describes the value of Boolean expression shown below? A and not B or A. So the not operator gets distributed out based off De Morgan's law. So it would be not B and not A. Well, how could it A be true and not B and not A? A cannot be true and false at the same time, which is the only way this whole thing could be anything besides false, is if A was simultaneously true and false, which is not possible. So I would write this out on my own on scratch paper and say not B, switch this or to an and switch this A to a not, because the not distributes to all three spots, and B, the value is always false, because with ands, they all need to be true, and A cannot be true and false at the same time. All right, consider the following code segment. Int val is 48, int div is 6, while val is divisible by 2, meaning it's even, and divisor is greater than 0. We're going to say if val is divisible by div, print value. Then divide val by 2, divisor goes down. What is printed when the code segment? All right, so 48 is even, and 6 is greater than 0. 48 is divisible by 6. Print 48. Divide by 2, that's 24. Divisor goes from 6 to 5. 24 is divisible by 2. Divisor, yada, yada, yada. Is 24 divisible by 5? No. Divide by 2, 12. Minus 4. Even. 12 is divisible by 4, so we print 12. So we know it's A, B, or C. Divide by 2. So that would be 6. Divisor is 3. 6 is even. 3 is greater than 0. 6 is divisible by 3. So we print 6 as well. Then we divide by 2. Divisor goes to 2 as well. So 6 goes to 3. Divisor goes to 2. Value is 3, so it's no longer even. So we're done with the while loop. So 48, 12, 6, A is our answer. Consider the following definition example. Private NX. Which of the following is a correct header for the method example class that would return the value of the private instance variable X so that it can be used in a class other than example? So private is signaling that it's only accessible in the class. So if we want it accessible outside the class, like it says, we would need the method to be public. That gives us these three possible answers. We want it to return a value. A getter return a value would have to have an int. So that would have our answer be C. You also would not have you would not need a parameter. It doesn't really make sense to have one with a returning a variable that's already in the class. Yeah. In the following code segment, assume the string str has been properly declared and initialized. The code segment is intended to print the number of strings in the array animals that have str as a substring. So we would loop through and we would check the index of str for each one of the values and count plus plus. So that looks pretty good here. If you skipped the most important part, which is every time you see a loop, you have to be positive you know what the starting value is, what the ending value is, and how much you go up by. So the ending value is where our issue is, I less than or equal to animals.length. Because our position starts at 0, this is mouse is at animals.length minus 1. Not animals.length. So we don't want our I value to reach animals.length. It would be an index out of bounds error. Which of the following changes should be made so the code segment works as intended? The Boolean expression in the for loop should be changed to I less than animals.length. That is our answer. There we go. Consider an integer array nums, which has been declared and initialized with one or more integer values. Which of the following code segments updates nums so that each element contains the square of its original value? All right, so we loop through nums, starting k at 0. K is the condition or the Boolean expression is done correctly. However, this would be an infinite loop. K would always be 0. There is no updating k, so that doesn't work. Here, k starts at 0. K is less than nums.length, k plus plus. Nums at k equals nums at k times nums at k. That looks great. A for each loop, n is getting set as a temporary variable value inside the nums list. That is what the for each loop does. It creates n as a variable, temporarily copying whatever is in nums. So n being updated would only update it inside the loop and would not update the actual nums array. So 2 only would be our answer A. Consider the code segment. Array list string numbers equals new array list string. So initialize the array list, add 1. I would write this out for sure. So let me do that real quick. Okay, so 1, then add 2, then add at 0, 3, so that would be added right here. And then set 2 to 4, sorry, position 2, so 0, 1, 2 to 4. Add 5 without a value, so that would add to the end, 5. Remove 1, 0, 1. So I got 3, 4, 5. Let's hope that's an answer. 3, 4, 5, D. That is our answer. Consider the value method which is intended to return a list containing the elements of the parameter myList with all even elements removed. All even elements removed. When I'm removing values from an array list, that should be alarm bells of like, All right, are they going to mess it up and not account for the fact that if you remove a value in a list, the values in the list shift down? And if our I plus pluses, when our list is removing a value, it is going to skip the next value in the list. So if I at 0, let's say, was even, it would remove I at 0, or the position 0 of the list, my list at 0. Then something that the my list at 1 would move into the my list at 0, but the next time through the loop, I would plus plus, and it would be checking my list dot get 1 when that was, when one of those is removed. So, which of the following best explains why the code segment does not work? It's because it skips values. The code segment skips some elements of my list because the indexes of all subsequent elements change by 1 when a list element is removed. So, if this is in a while loop, you could say have an if else I plus plus, only plus plus if you do not remove the value. You could do I minus minus right here to counter the I plus plus when you remove a value. Those are the two most common ways of doing it. So just have to account for it in some way. Consider the following code segment. 11 to 15, 21 to 25. Okay. So what is printed when the code segment is executed? So we loop through all the rows. And this is row major order. We loop through all the columns backwards. And our column has to be greater than or equal to row. So if row is 0, column would start at the last value and go all the way to 0. So it should print backwards every single value, 15, 14, 13, 12, and 11. Because row is 0. We start at the last value of columns, position in columns, and we go all the way back. Yeah. So 15, 14, 13, 12, 11 is either D or E. And I know my rows, or my number of columns, is going to be less as my rows increase. I'm only going to go from 25 to 22 because my row is 1, so I wouldn't go to column 0. So 25 to 22 is D. It's confirming what I thought. 35 to 33, yes. And then 45 to 44, yeah, D would be our answer. All right, you have a 2D array, ARR. You have X as an array. Each row, basically, an ARR, and Y is going to be each position in the array, except not including the last position. It's not going to loop there. So it's just going to do 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11. So, because it should be Y less than X dot length, not X dot length minus 1. So, 6, 11, 17, 24, 33, 43, 54. B would be our answer. Okay. Consider the following class definition. Thing 1, calc n, n times equals 3, print n. Okay. Thing 2, we add 2 to n, we call super.calc n, which does not change the value for n, but it would print something. And then we would print n in the calc method for thing 2. So thing one, first of all, is the compile time value of t, but as long as there's no error with the method call, this does not affect anything at all. New thing two, so t is essentially a thing two object dot calc 2. So we plug in 2 here, 2 plus n plus equals 2, so n is 4. Super.calc 4, 4 times 3 is 12. We print 12, but all primitive types and strings are passed by values as parameters, so meaning n will not update when it's passed in. It will just basically pass in the value 4. It's like writing 4 right there. So times equals 3 does equal 12, and it prints 12, but n does not update. N is still 4. So then we would print our value 4. So it'll print 12 with no ln there, and then 4. So it would be 1, 2, 4. Okay. The following two methods, which are intended to return the same values when they are called with the same positive integer n. If n is greater than 1, return 5 plus mystery 1 n minus 1. All right, this is looping. All right, so I'm going to take another snipping tool, write out. You should always write out your... Yeah, it's going to cause a weird error there. Do I have to type this in? Nope. It's just not going to let me do it. All right, I'm going to do it in my head. So, n is greater than 1. Return 5 plus mystery. Okay. So let's pretend it's 3. Okay. 3 is greater than 1. 5 plus mystery 2. 2 is greater than 1. Would be another 5 plus mystery 1. And then it would return 1. So it would be 5 plus 5 plus 1. Okay? And then if it's 3 here, it would be x is less than, 1 is less than 3. Total plus equals 5, x plus plus. Total plus equals 5, x plus plus, total plus equals 5. Okay. So this would only add, when x is 1 and 2, it would add 5, add 5. Total needs to start at 1 because to match this return 1 at the end, which is the last thing we add. 5, 5, and then 1. So the total variable should be initialized to 1. So we do plus equals 5, plus equals 5. Also, if we just had 1 at the very beginning, this loop would never happen, so we would just return 1. And this if statement would never happen, so we would just return 1 if we started at 1. So that kind of confirms that that answer is correct. Okay?